My name is Derek Morgan from the University of West Florida, and I am presenting on mapping beach territoriality. A little background on this project. A long time ago, I've had a long interest in the tensions between public and private access to the beach. Grew up in Ormond Beach, Florida, saw the beach go from a highly public to a mostly public, but highly inaccessible during different times of the day beach. Moving on to finish my PhD in geography, became a researcher, and thought, let me look at how I can turn this into a project and apply some of what I do, which is mapping and GIS, to this question of beach territoriality. In 2018, Florida passed the House Bill 631, which riled up the citizens of the state and got people interested for a little bit in the topic, but that interest has, of course, since waned in general. We've certainly had a lot going on in the world, and getting to the beach only comes up for a lot of people occasionally. Since 2019, a colleague of mine, Dr. Evans, also at UWF, and I have been working on a book on the topic. So who benefits from this work? Generally, I think the benefit is around the question of justice and equity. The public should benefit, but really private homeowners should benefit too. And there are cases where you'll see where there is private and private tensions, such as a neighbor building a second story on their home and blocking your view to the water. Also, coastal developers should benefit, and planners who are looking at these landscapes and wanting to head off any potentially costly litigation. Some influential books on this work are from David Delaney, Territoriality, or Territory, and he talks about the different lenses of territory through different disciplines and bringing it to human geography. He points to David Sachs' work on human territoriality from 1983. And then I've also been looking at Mark Monomer's work on cartography and how maps are used in defining territory. And Kaufman and Pilkey's work, particularly chapter 11, where they ask the question, who owns the beaches? And they look to unpack that. So what do I mean by territorial tension? Well, Dave Delaney gives a pretty good account of the term territoriality, as I mentioned, but Sachs gives a definition: the attempt by an individual or group to affect, influence, or control people, phenomena, and relationships by delimiting and asserting control over a geographic area. The tools and methods we used in this project largely revolve around participatory methods and tools. Those are public space index, sketch mapping, aerial photography, which is what we use to capture transboundary viewsheds, which I'll explain a little more, and audio-video journaling, or geojournaling as I call it. And I have some references down there if you would like to look those up that were influential in me choosing those methods. So the first method, public space index, literally the students and the surveyors on our team go out and they look at the public space and they rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, particular metrics like, is there audible pleasant noise? Is there audible unpleasant noise? And so this sounds very subjective, but when you get enough raters and you control for inter-rater reliability, you hypothetically can get an empirical assessment of a public space. And we take those metrics into radar graphs, which allows us to compare beaches and public spaces directly, with a visual method. And you can see Wayside Beach here compared to Seagrove, Wayside being a largely, privatized and residential beach. And then Wayside is a public beach with a lot of parking and accessibility features such as boardwalks. And so that kind of shakes out in different ways. Sketch mapping is a technique we use where we had students and surveyors going out and looking at these spaces, walking around these spaces, and literally circling on the map where they felt that a particular part of a beach was inaccessible and why. More importantly, why they felt that way. So you can see 1 and 4s and these polygons over here where this particular student surveyor had indicated, and then you have 2 and 6, and the numbers are cut off here, but the not physically safe is 1 and cleanliness is 7. So 6 is cultural barriers. So that probably was like people with umbrellas or chairs or something like that. And then you can take all that and again do the iterated reliability test and come up with a final map, for these particular metrics of how accessible is this space. The third method is using aerial photography to look at something I'm calling transboundary viewsheds. The term means that you have a viewshed, which is derived from watershed, a view across a space from a particular observer point. And there are different boundary makeups. There's private makeup, there's public makeup, there's quasi-public. And you can even break that down further to commercial versus residential. But there's going to be a different content that make up that viewshed. And so we first estimated it, the viewshed, directly from digital elevation models and GIS. And then we went out and validated this. You see the students do that with the clipboard, said, where is this viewshed right or wrong? Then the fun part is we took a balloon with a GoPro camera attached to it and flew it around the space. And then we were able to contextualize these views from these particular observer points with actual photography. And the students presented this all in an Instagram page because COVID had come up and we weren't allowed to do in-person presentations. So they creatively came up with this idea of doing it on Instagram. So you can go view that there. I have a link. And the fourth and final method we used was audio and video geojournaling, where we literally had students, with one student in this case with a camera, attached to his forehead with a strap, walk from the top of the beach down into the water. And, if he had to walk around people, that was fine, but he just took the most direct route. And then we had another student walking a particular pattern, like a grid pattern or a linear pattern along the shoreline and recording the sounds of the beach. So that was, sort of a geojournaling of the experiences at these beaches we went to. So I have a quote here from the environmental psychologist, Henley. Here's my take on it. Along these lines, we predict that for many, both access and exclusion are assumed and taken for granted at public beaches. More practically, the participatory cartographic methods we use hopefully can be informative to land use planners and decrease the likelihood of property rights tension in the future. Acknowledgements, I would like to acknowledge the UWF Kugelman Honors Program for their involvement. Their students have always been passionate and engaged and very helpful in this project. Also, artist Tay Yoland, she worked with us last year and was very influential in some of the techniques we utilized. And she was very much creative in terms of coming up with techniques even beyond what I discussed here that move more in the direction of art and sort of socially conscious art. And Dr. Jocelyn Evans and I are writing a book on all of this work, which you can look to come out in 2021. We're kind of right in the middle of it, right in the thick of it. So we're going to be packing this all into a Springer publication. And so I'd like to thank Dr. Evans. Thank you.